Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the ADD workshop. Got something a little bit different than what we're used to seeing in here today, but that hence the name of the channel. You never know what you're gonna get. Today I'm gonna show you my home built wood splitter. As you can see, this isn't your normal type of wood splitter. This is a screw type wood splitter. It's much more efficient as far as how it delivers its power to the log, its splitting power. It's a screw force. So instead of just being a brunt force wanting to push through a log, you have something wanting to screw into it, and you're looking at rotational torque rather than, just PSI. In which relation this, you can get a whole lot more of power out of something like this than you would a hydraulic splitter of the same engine type and horsepower. If this was running hydraulics, you could only pound for pound, power for power. This gives you more power for the horsepower that you have. Simply put, this would be roughly a 50-ton log splitter that is using a 6.5 horsepower motor, and I was able to build for about $100. Granted, I didn't have to buy the motor and this whole chassis, which I'll go over here in just a minute, but I had to buy this cone, and I had to buy the belts and just a couple of pulleys because I couldn't get them the exact size I wanted. Also had to buy these pillow blocks that they call. There's 4 of them. There's 2 here, and then if you can see down here, there's where can we get to them here? Nope, can't see them. There they are. There's 2 up in there that runs a secondary pulley. This is a gear reduction, and ideally I didn't want a gear reduction. The faster this thing can ultimately turn, the faster you can split a log. So the bigger your motor, the more, honestly, the simpler it gets, because you could have just ran one belt from here to your motor. Using one belt, I will say, is very much so pushing it. If this was any more horsepower, I would have a double V belt set up, and I've done some things to help it, but it will still jam up in a log, and that is when these types of log splitters really show their downfall, which is getting them unstuck out of a log is a pain in the rear. I had to build a huge lever that goes across the pulley to be able to rotate it backwards to unscrew it out of the log, because it gets so deep that the log is trying to close back up on it, and it keeps trying to close up on it the entire way down. So you have to fight it the entire time, and it is no fun. In short, why I'm making this video is because when I was wanting to build this thing, there's a lot of guesswork that had to go into it because things were unclear. You can find videos of these things running and splitting, and people going over how they built them a little bit, but they don't tell you what you really need to know. They tell you how they built it, and either you build it that exact way, or you're going to be going through the same trial and error that I did. So I'm going to go over this whole thing, and if somebody out there wants to build a log splitter, they should be able to apply my tips to whatever type of splitter they're making. Whatever type setup they have for a screw splitter. First of all, this cone, buy it. Get on eBay. You can usually only find them from the Ukraine. It took 2 months to get in, and eBay buyer protection stepped in because they didn't talk to me the entire time, and refunded my money. So I actually ended up getting this for free. It was $80 though. So do not overspend on this cone. This is a solid CNC piece of steel, and I don't see it wearing out anytime soon. Secondly, I went with an 1 1/8" shaft because it's what I had. In retrospect, I would have went for an 1 1/4" because most of these that you find just come standard 1 1/4. Where I ordered it, they were able to customize it to an 1 1/8", and it worked perfect. They did perfect with their sizing. But if it was 1 1/4", I would have had more options of where I could have bought it just right off the shelf rather than them having to make it for me. So first of all, go with an 1 1/4" shaft. These pillow blocks, I spent I think about $10 a piece on them, and there's 4 of them, and I'll explain why in just a moment. Your pulley, heavier is better and bigger is better. Even if you're going to gear it down, mess with your gearing with the other pulley rather than this one. Make this as large as possible. As you can see, I attempted to make this pretty much a flywheel. I took a 25-pound barbell and tapped the end of my shaft and bolted it on, and then welded it around here and welded it in a bunch of places all the way around. Believe it or not, it's actually very centered and doesn't wobble a whole bunch. By the way, I'm not running this in this video. I'm going to post another video of this running, because I want that to be a nice long video that people can see the full range of what this can do. Most of them that I saw, there's 2-3 minutes of them splitting and it's not a great angle, or they do the same size over and over and over again. I'm actually going to jam this up on purpose with something I know too big, and I do it in the improper way that I know will jam it up to show you what you got to go through. So to start off, this whole thing was a pressure washer. That's right. As you can see, I think it says M2M 2700 PSI. I was walking around and I saw the horizontal shaft on the motor pump and realized I could just slip that off and put a pulley on it to run a belt and run whatever I wanted to. So that's what I did. Basically, this whole frame that you see here is removable. That's right, I can turn this back into my pressure washer if I want. So really, if you just have a pressure washer, you're not destroying it. You can, and at least in this fashion, you can make it keep being a pressure washer if you want. All I'd have to do would be unbolt here, and there's 2 more on the other side. You can see where I put a piece of angle iron for a frame to put my risers on. This piece of angle iron is the only thing bolted to this main chassis here, frame. And then the handles that come up is, I actually took the extent of my table here, teed out. You can see my 2 risers come up here, and then it tees over. Bam. Then we come over to here, and we got a bolt here and a bolt there, bolting it to my handle there. And that is the basic support and frame. Oops, sorry about that. Basic frame and support of this thing here. Now you can see my secondary platform. Now I had to do this after the fact, which was real fun, and build just a box, get it in between the risers here, weld it in, and mount these pillow blocks. This is one shaft that goes through. There's one, you can see both of the pillow blocks in there, and it comes out to a pulley back here. Now this big guy here is a 8 or 10 inch pulley, I forget. Goes down to what I believe is a 2-inch pulley, and then this basically turns these this whole axle, which turns this smaller pulley, which turns my bigger pulley, which effectively geared it down. And I got lucky because most of what I read, the ideal RPM was about 500, and this is running at about 570 RPM, which is, 470 RPM, which is perfect. So basically you can see I didn't modify the pressure washer too much. All I did was put that pulley on the shaft and bolt this whole show here to the frame. And these right here, I have some pipes that go through and come all the way out, like big long arms to carry it, and it has wheels, so it brings your center of gravity up front and makes it a little easier to push around. The tires, I need to make the stance wider and get some better tires. Those things are soft, squishy tires, and they're not good for what I'm wanting to be able to do. Ideally, I can take this directly to a fallen tree, split it, load all of the wood one time onto a trailer already split, rather than loading it, taking it off, splitting it, loading it, taking it off and stacking it, blah blah blah. Don't have to do all of that. Alright, so some of the specifics of this thing. This table here is way too far away from this thing. My first run, I bent my shaft. My piece of wood turned sideways and went in sideways. Now, if you can imagine, you have, 4 inches of wood right here. As it goes, it runs out of room, and it just pushes this up because the grain of the wood is its strongest when you're just trying to compress it. This can't compress it, so it just bent my shaft, and I ended up having to buy a piece of one, and I bought a big motor coupler and just coupled the new shaft into my good shaft, because my pulley, as you can see, is welded. So I had to keep this piece of the shaft. I couldn't just take this off and put it on a new shaft, so I had to use a piece of my old shaft at least. That was a whole lot of fun, and if you're building this and have some money, just buy the correct size pulleys for the shaft that you have, so you don't have to weld and do all this BS. If I had $300, I could have built this. It would have been a breeze. So, alright, let's see. What else would we need to know? Stance. Oh yeah, the legs here, these are held up with this strap right now, but if I let this strap down, these fold down to the ground. See, you got one over here too that folds down at an angle. Then this strap here goes from the leg around the back of this frame back to this leg to hold the legs downward. So it makes pretty good support, but do a better job of support than I did. I ended up having to do secondary support from here straight to the ground. It's a whole mess. Let's see. The sturdier your table can be, the better. This is where all of the force of the, well, more like right here, depending on which way your cone is going to spin, all your pressure is going to be right here, right where the log wants to try to turn over. And ideally what you want, and what I had to do, since I know you see these bars here, I'll show you what these are for in a second. Since my table was so low and this couldn't be my tabletop anymore, which was very disheartening, not to mention I built all of this before I got the cone and realized even if this was my table, I would have no room to start a log. I would have to be holding it and start a log to go on it, and that would be insanely dangerous. And speaking of danger, don't have anything dangling. I have right here the kill switch, or the on-off switch actually, for my pressure washer. It's fishing string, so if I end up having to pull too hard, I don't break my switch. The string will just break after it cuts it off. And it comes up to here, it goes up to this guy here, and I can run a rope from here to a tree or something way off in the distance, so I can just hit it and it will shut off fairly instantly. So I've tried to make it as safe as I can, but as long as you're not being stupid, you won't be fine. When you're pushing on a log to start it on the screw, you feel it when it starts to screw, and you basically just let go of it and let the machine do the work. I end up pulling this when I know the machine's about to bog down and stall, but this big heavy weight really helps in those hard seconds where it's just really hard to turn, it helps smooth it out and push on through the hard knots. Alright, so let me show you what these little rails are for. I'm gonna try to hook my phone up here, so just close your eyes if you don't want to get motion sickness for a second. Alright, well, you can kind of see. Well, hang on, let me show you this table first. Okay, so I made this tabletop. It can, let's see, see, these rails slide onto those pipes, and this thing also can ride right back here. And I take my 550 cord here, go around my pulley, go around it back to the thing, pull it tight, and it holds my tabletop there in transit. So yeah, I had to basically build a whole nother top to bring my table up closer to here, and I will tell you why in just a second, other than what I've already told you. Alright, so let me grab this and put it onto the splitter here. Alright, sorry about the shakiness, people. I'm trying to do all this one-handed here. Alright, hope that wasn't too bad. Anyway, so you grab your tabletop and you'd come over, you would see these they're unistrut, and actually that's 3/4 conduit down there. You just line up your unistrut onto there, it slides on. Now that it's slid on there, alright, we got a nice big table surface here to do our splitting, and I take this and go around these little bolts here. I don't get caught up in there. Pull it tight with this little cam, and it holds my table back onto the splitter as I go. Now, why I had to build that was because now you can see how much room is in between the splitter and the table. Essentially what you're trying to do, and this is what's most important of all, is this needs to be the distance from this table to where if your log tries to rotate, what's going to happen is it will rotate out of the screw before it will be able to go up under the screw. It will pull out of the screw. So the screw will essentially just pop out of the bottom of the log before it sucks the log under the screw. And that is how much distance you'll need, is whatever size logs you're splitting. If you're splitting something this big, well, when it tries to go in here, it can flip. It'll get sucked in and you bend your shaft again, like I did. So if you have even a smaller log than say 8 inches, 6 inches, no, I say 6 inches in diameter, I have another just piece of plywood that I can slide up under here that fits just perfect, and basically brings the level of the table even closer to the thing when I have smaller wood. And it's something you'll need to do and plan on having on hand, is some spacers, just depending on the size of your log. If you've got a huge log, you do not have to worry about the thing flipping on you. Just set it up here, boom, start pushing, it sucks up on there, your log is split. I have a 1x6 that I set right here, and I'll put it up against my hip. Sits up against the base of the log. I can hold the top of the log and lean forward with my hip, so when it starts to suck in there, if something happened or if the log moved out of the way, I don't fall into the screw. This little 1x6 would just slide and no problems. But those are the things I did to try to make myself safe. So like I said, if you're going to build this, if you have anything less than, I'd say, 12 horsepower, you're going to need to gear it down. Do not worry about your RPMs as much. It really doesn't matter. Torque and power are what matters on this. If you can have all the torque and power and it still be just as fast, go for it. There's no need to gear it down. If it doesn't have the power or the torque at the speed that your motor is putting out, you have to gear it down. So as you can see, not sure what size these were. I think this is 2.5 or something. This up here is a 12-inch pulley. So you know, it took quite a while to build this thing. Simply, I was waiting on that screw. It took forever, and you can see I braced this with a ridiculous amount, and this is actually directly over the supports. This all goes through here. This is 1/2-inch plate, and there's cross members there, angle iron here, this, but it's there to make it sturdy because all your force is right here. This is going to want to rotate, and it's going to want to go every direction you don't want it to go. But the coolest thing, like I said, if you have a pressure washer, you're not destroying your pressure washer, and you can do this just for fun. And you don't have to buy a whole nother motor, everything like that. And if I need my pressure washer back, I am 6 bolts away. I'd have to take off this belt, that pulley, and slide my pump back on. That is maybe 45 minutes to have my pressure washer back. I need a pressure washer once a year. So it's not a big deal to have to swap it, and just being able to, it makes all the difference in the world. But I will do an update, and my next video will be me running this thing. I wanted to do a nice long video of just straight running. I didn't want to do a bunch of talking and have to explain all this and then split wood. This would be an hour-long video. So yeah, I wanted to go over it in this one, and I will split it in the next video. And please, you know, stay tuned. It's not going to get any less interesting, I promise you that. Well, alright everybody, thank you so much for joining me here at the ADD Workshop. As always, go ahead and subscribe and hit the alert notification if you haven't. I'm not sure when I'll be putting out another video, so you'll kind of need to be alerted if you want to know when it came out. And I will see y'all in the next one.